Hi, I'm Connor Quimby, and this is How to Make an Awful Conlang, Episode 5, the Writing Script. Before we get started with the content of this video, I'd like to thank you all for waiting so patiently for the new episode. My computer was not able to function anymore, so I got a new one recently, and now I'll be making videos, hopefully at a normal, regular time frame. It's important to understand the different types of writing systems and how they work before we can truly start to dissect and use their awfulness in our horrible Conlang. Disclaimer, I don't know what I'm doing, nor do I know what I'm talking about. There are 6 main different types of writing systems in use today in our modern society by normal, natural languages. The first one is what you might be the most familiar with, the alphabet. The alphabet is a writing system where each glyph represents one sound. Now, because languages and spelling shift over time, this is proved like with English, French, other languages that are notorious for dropping consonants, vowel changes. Alphabets are easily corruptible and therefore might be a good choice for your horrible Conlang. Next, we're going to talk about the abugida. An abugida is a writing system where each glyph represents a consonant and then a vowel. So this is most notable with some of the Indian and Southeast Asian scripts. Base glyphs remain the same, and then you can modify that based on your vowel sound. An abjad is a system where vowels are not necessarily written. They're either implied just by the consonants there, or they're tacked on like with some forms of Arabic with diacritics. The 2 main abjads in use today, per my knowledge, are Arabic and Hebrew. Even though they're both abjads, Arabic and Hebrew look very different from each other. Arabic is more free-flowing and cursive. Its letters get connected by each other, although they can change forms based on where in that connection they are, whereas Hebrew looks more blocky to the outside viewer, less connected. They both read right to left, which is something we'll actually return to later. The next 3 writing systems we're going to talk about are found mainly in East Asia, although they've been used by other cultures throughout history. Let's start with the featural system. The featural system is where each glyph represents the ways the sound is made. So Korean's Hangul is the main example for this. Where you draw your lines indicate how the sound is made in the mouth. Fellow linguist YouTuber Artifexian uses a featural system for his Conlang Oa. Next, there's syllabaries. Syllabaries are pretty simple. Each glyph represents a syllable. The main instance of this is Japan's kana system. We're going to come back to Japan a little later in this video, so stick around if you like Japan. Finally, there's logographic systems. A logography is where each glyph represents a fully fledged morpheme. So Chinese is the main example of this that everyone always thinks of. It's got thousands and thousands of characters, each representing a word. Now that it's got stroke order, it's got tone in there. Stroke order, actually, while we're on the topic of that, you might want to add that into your Conlang's writing system, even if it's not a logographic system. Makes stroke order important. While we're on the concept of stroke order, I'd like to point out a very good point made by Artifexian in his writing systems video a few years back. The way that your culture or Conlang is actually physically written affects the writing system. So Chinese uses a brush, therefore stroke order matters. Cuneiform, clay sticks, that's why it's so blocky. Russian uses Adidas stripes for their, oh god. Alright, back to the main point. Now there's one other thing you could do that I can think of, and that's just make a completely new writing system. Now that's going to be very hard, and I honestly don't know what you're going to do for that because I can't think of any examples, but good luck if you choose to go that path. Now that we understand the writing systems of the world, I think it's time we start putting this to our Conlang. So there are 3 main ways I can think of that we could do this. We can either use a currently existing writing system. We can partially make a new writing system by deriving from an old one, such as how Latin took influence from both the Greek and Etruscan alphabets. Or what we can do is make up completely new glyphs for any one of the writing systems. And I'm actually not going to immediately recommend you to do that, because we can make orthography and learning how to read in our Conlang absolutely horrible by either using an existing writing system or deriving from an existing writing system. Sample time. Our first example is going to be using the first method I said, which is using an existing alphabet. So for that, I'm going to actually dig out one of my old Conlangs, the first one I ever made. It was called Circa. I never finished it because it was absolutely horrible, and part of that was the orthography and the writing system I used. So on screen right now, you're seeing all the IPA sounds I used for Circa. If you can remember back to episode 2, sounds, you'll note that some of these sounds, such as our very far back in the throat plosives and our labial fricatives, are kind of unusual. On the right side of the screen now, you're seeing all the characters I used to represent those sounds, and some of them are poor choices because I wanted to stick to the IPA. Some of the really bad ones, I think, are using the Swedish A instead of ash if you're not starting a word for the sound a. And that just doesn't make sense because why would you have different characters in an alphabet for the same sound? Oh, wait. This is an awful Conlang. That's a really good idea. Maybe you should write that down. Some other bad ones are using the OE. I just don't think that's really necessary in today's modern world. And then for many of the more rare consonants I used, I chose to use essentially IPA characters or sometimes other European letters that would represent the sound I was trying to go for. So you see the S with a little thingy on the bottom. I can't remember what that's called, but that's in like Turkish and stuff. And that's sh. Looking back on Circa's writing system, I think I made two good choices actually, and that one of them was using the Hachek for G farther back in the throat, and the other one was using X for the velar fricative, which is actually something I really like, and I still do it today in my conlangs. But to summarize all this, if you're going to choose to use an existing writing system, make sure you use diacritics. Diacritics are annoying. Diacritics can mean a lot, whether that be a separate vowel sound, whether that be tone, stuff like that. So Vietnamese uses tons of diacritics because it's got tone, it's got more consonants than English. Now, Spanish and French use them for different sounds, sometimes stress. Use a lot of them. The other thing is to keep in mind that you want to make this awful to type as well. So it shouldn't be typable easily on a QWERTY keyboard. You're going to want people to have to memorize alt codes. You're going to want to have people use the special characters tab in Google Chrome furiously when they're trying to type your language. Now, let's get into our second method, which is deriving a writing script from an existing writing script. My method that I would suggest, modify Chinese characters to work for your Conlang's grammar and whatever else you need to put in that's going to make it more complex. So, as we all know, Chinese characters, very complex. Some of them have upwards of 20 strokes in it for a single morpheme. Stroke order, we already talked about that. Now, Japan uses Chinese characters, but they also use a syllabary. So, they modified Chinese characters, mixed it with their own native script, and they actually have 3 writing scripts. The other one's for foreign words. So it's kind of a lot to deal with, but it might actually work really well for Conlang if you're trying to make it awful. Japanese is often critiqued as harder than Chinese to learn, to write and read. Let's do an example. On screen you'll see the character in Chinese for the noun cat, as in the animal. Now, take this character. Think of something completely random and unrelated to cat. Now assign that word to that character, and there you go, boom. Change some stuff for some grammar, and there you go. You've got yourself a new glyph. Only 35,000 or so more to go. Here's a bad or good idea, depending on how you look at it. Write down some glyphs on a piece of paper. Run them under a faucet. Smear the ink around. There you go. You've got a new glyph. On to the third method, making our completely new from-scratch writing system. Now this is where you ask yourself, which writing system works the absolute worst with my Conlangs, grammar, and sounds? So, for instance, if you have tons of vowels in your Conlang, an Abjad is right for you. If your language is agglutinative, you're going to want to use a logographic system. That's going to be absolutely awful. Why would you do that? Similarly, you could use a syllabary depending on how many different sounds you have. The more sounds you have, the more glyphs you're going to need for a syllabary. And again, you could do what I mentioned with Japan earlier and have multiple different writing systems where that writing system being used actually means something. Now we're actually going to start making your glyphs. Imagine you're a small child and you have been tasked of making a code. A code so no one else can read, but you can read it yourself. And basically, you've drawn a bunch of scribbles. Now imagine you're that same kid, but you're older and you understand how language and writing systems work. Apply that same logic to making glyphs. And oh my gosh, it will be absolutely horrible to make. And I can tell you that from experience because I've tried that before, and it's not good. We will do an example of this at the end of the video, but right now I want to talk about what order we write our glyphs in. Do we write from left to right to left, up, down up, 3D, 4D, 11D, curved? But one thing I would like you to think about is going left to right, then right to left. There's some fancy term for that, but it's the way the ox plows. So you alternate lines, which basically means you're going to have to reverse it every line. You get what I mean. That might be pretty cool. I don't think that's been used for a very long time by any natlings. So right now, I'm going to make a fake alphabet using the sounds represented by the English glyphs of D, E, F, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, R, S, T, and Y. So let's do the first one. D, E, F, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, R, S, T, Y. And we use it like anyone would use a writing system to spell out stuff. And here you go. I'm Connor Quimby, and this has been How to Make an Awful Conlang, Episode 5, The Writing Script.